We'll start shortly, okay? Guys, just on the mechanics of the webinar, we are planning to have the webinar in 1 hour. If we have to stay a little longer, it's fine, but we will do our best to complete all topics in 1 hour, including questions and answers, okay? At the end of the webinar, we'll have a Q&A section. Please send your questions. There is no need for you to save your question to the end. Just send as we go, and then I will moderate. Perhaps I take one question during the presentation. Perhaps we'll save them all to the end. We'll see. We're flexible here, okay? So send as you wish, okay? Now that we already have 2 minutes after our time, and we have people already here, we also have people on YouTube. So let's get started. What's the topic for today? The topic today is about students, okay, and options that students have to live and to work in the US. We all know, I've been a student in the US, and we all know how hard it is for a student, for a foreigner student, after graduation to remain in the country, basically, except for very few options. The student needs a job offer. So that's a condition that the student faces. And in practical matters, the reality is that students knock on the doors of employers, and the employer will say, oh, do you have a work authorization? And then the student can only reply, oh, I need you to give me the employment authorization. So it's a chicken and an egg dilemma for students, and that hurts the career. We all know that. And what we will be doing here now is to explore one very good alternative that we work a lot, which is the EB-5 visa, which is technically a green card petition for students. So in short, how can I facilitate the life of a college student that will be leaving college very soon, or even a high school teenager that's planning to do college in the US, and a family that's planning for the kids to remain in the US, to live in the US, and to work in the US. The EB-5 is the perfect program for that option, and our plan here today is to educate the market on that alternative, what it is, the details, and etc. Okay, so by the end of this webinar, we hope you to get to know the EB-5 advantages, how those advantages play well for students, and how to do it. Okay, what it needs, what it takes. Okay, I have Bruna Canto from FirstPathway Partners with me. We also have Chris Costa, is our senior immigration attorney out of Miami. We also have Mateus Etrusco, our junior attorney that specializes together with Chris on EB-5 petitions. Let me, just a quick disclaimer. Every time we talk about EB-5s, we are very careful not to this to be seen as an offer. This is not an offer for investment, okay? Every time you make an investment decision in the US, you need to be very careful, and you need to get all the information needed. This webinar here will not provide you that type of information. This webinar will not provide you enough information to invest, and that's not the goal here, okay? So that's a disclaimer. Please read through. It's a compliance obligation we have, and we fulfill, okay? Just a little bit about ourselves and about Drummond Advisors, and then I'll call Bruna to talk a little bit about FirstPathway Partners as well. We are a specialized company specialized in cross-border transactions between Brazil and the US mainly. We focus in the US and Brazil because of our background. I'm also Brazilian. I'm a dual licensed lawyer, Brazil and the US. And we at Drummond, we have several other companies to provide a one-stop shop solution for people doing business or immigrating between Brazil and the US. We are a team of certified lawyers and accountants in both countries. We have now offices in Boston, Miami, New York, São Paulo, and Belo Horizonte. More than a decade in business, more than 5,000 active clients, and a team of more than 200 employees. What are our lines of businesses? First, right here, legal services. That's what we will be talking about, okay? I'm the leader of this practice here, and we have several practices within the legal department, one of which is business immigration, okay, between the two countries. What we do on business immigration, several business visas, including L1, EB-1A, EB-2, EB-2 national interest waiver, H-1B, O-1, and so forth. As you may know, the US has hundreds of visas from A to Z, okay? And one of that is the EB-5, and we represent several clients on EB-5 petitions. Chris and Mateus are one of the specialized lawyers and assistants doing business with EB-5, okay? Aside of the legal, besides the legal service, we have CPAs sitting on the accounting and tax services. This is important because when we are talking about immigration to the US, one of the very sensitive topics that involves immigration is taxation in the US. So we always advise our clients to take a tax planning, okay, to do what we call a pre-immigration tax planning. And our team can also provide, our tax specialists will jump in and provide that scope of work as well, okay? That being said, let me turn to Bruna. Bruna, thank you very much for being here, longtime partner of ours. Please introduce yourself, FirstPathway Partners as well. Give us a little background, and then we'll get started.
Sure. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you for the invitation to be here. So my name is Bruna Canto. I'm the director at FirstPathway Partners. I am also Brazilian like Pedro, but I have lived in the US most of my life. I'm currently outside of the US, but I lived there for 23 years. My personal experience has always been in the financial services industry, working for private banking, various banks in Miami. And since 2017, I have been working with EB-5. Okay, so FirstPathway Partners is a regional center authorized by the Immigration Department to offer these EB-5 projects to international investors interested in permanent residence through the EB-5 visa. FirstPathway was founded in 2008, so we're one of the oldest regional centers still active. We were the 21st regional center to be authorized by USCIS out of hundreds, if not, I'm not sure if it has reached thousands, but there are currently hundreds of regional centers authorized by the Immigration Department, but not very many still active after the recent changes with the program. So we have over 600 investors throughout these years since 2008, and they come from over 40 countries. So those investors invested in one of our 16 previous projects, which we have offered in the past. We're currently on the 17th project, which is a resort with a beautiful resort in California, Coachella Valley, with 2 hotels, private residences, very high-end project, which also includes Arnold Palmer Golf Course. Okay, so we will not be getting too much into projects today. Today, we're going to be talking more about why this is a perfect program for international students, but anyone that wants to hear more about FirstPathway or projects, we can schedule a meeting, individual meeting after.
Okay, thanks, Bruna. Thanks. Let's get started. So let's assume I'm a father of 2, okay, a son and a daughter. Son is, let's say, 19, daughter 17, son is at Harvard, okay? And daughter is at high school applying for college. She does hope to make Stanford. So You know, we're good. We're doing good. But I'm a foreigner and I don't know how I can facilitate the life of those kids to remain in the US after college. Okay, how they can work in the US after they graduate. Or let's assume I'm a college counselor and I advise students, foreign students, going to the US. And until now, all that I do is to provide them with information about good colleges, good universities, what to do, and etc. But I also want to let the parents know about their options for their kids after graduation. So let's answer the questions to that father and to that college counselor. And then I turn to Chris. Chris, what's all about? What's EB-5? Let's start with a quick summary on the program. How much is the program? How much do I need to invest? What's all about? Okay. And we will start with a summary of the EB-5 with the agenda here. And then we go to the benefits for students and so forth. Chris, please, you and Matheus.
Okay, so the EB-5 program has been around for a long time. The program was initiated as a direct investment program back in 1990 with the intention of stimulating foreign direct investment in the United States. I believe the US was one of the first major countries to kind of institute a popular citizenship by investment program. Nowadays, I think they're a lot more popular than they were a few years ago, or at least there's more news about them. It seems like got really popular in Europe. But since 1992, the EB-5 Regional Center Program has been a vehicle for passive investment that could enable citizenship. But in its essence, an EB-5 investment is a private equity investment like any other. The only difference is that this investment could be made through a vehicle that has been authorized by USCIS to collect money from foreign investors and who may participate individually in the EB-5 program and petition for US residency on that basis.
Okay.
So let me just touch on, I guess, what's on the slide. So for people that aren't too familiar with the EB-5 program's recent history, there was some turmoil as has been the case with immigration, I guess, in general, but the program was lapsed for many months, almost a year, did not quite reach the year mark, luckily, due to litigation, of course. The program was reauthorized. It has to periodically be reauthorized, just because it's not a program written in statute like the direct investment. The Regional Center Program is kind of like an offshoot, a temporary offshoot that is periodically reauthorized. So it was reauthorized by the court, totally restructured as an immigration attorney, as a member of the immigration community, and I think speaking on behalf of most practitioners, the program was improved and a lot of deficiencies were addressed. So it is now active until September 30, 2027. That's great news for anybody maybe thinking about college at this point, because they have 5 years, and as long as you get your petition in before September 30th, 2027, then you're all right.
Okay. And Chris, so me as a father of two, I already know that the EB-5 I can invest for my kids to become permanent residents in the US. And then as a permanent resident in the US, they will be allowed to work regardless of the employer, okay? And they can leave in the US regardless of having a job offer. So the EB-5 will allow them to get a green card without a job offer. But as my kids are in Harvard now and the daughter wishes to go to Stanford, I'm spending a lot of money, right? A lot of money. How much do I need to invest for the EB-5 program?
So The minimum investment now, which is based on geographic investment or project type, which I guess we'll touch on later, is currently $800,000. And that's excluding other fees for participation in the program. So I guess you'd have to have, just to round it out, let's say $1 million.
Okay, so it's at 800,000 for investments, okay, plus fees. Usually there are some admin fees. Oh, by the way, guys, I'm sorry, I forgot about this. For those that are not English speakers, we have a live translation to Portuguese. I can see several Portuguese speakers on the audience. So make sure you go and you click for the translation. There is an option down there on the menu. Mateus, so $800,000, but I have spent a lot with my kids already. They are in the US for the past 5 years doing college. So I don't have the money now, okay? But I have assets. I have apartments that I can sell, or even better, I have a cousin that's very rich, and that cousin wants to perhaps sponsor my kids, okay? Make a loan or make a donation, etc. Tell me a little about what we call source of funds. And before I turn to you, let me explain a little bit about this definition. So basically, every legitimate source of funds is a good source of funds for immigration purposes, okay, for the EB-5. But we need to evidence that where those funds come from. Mateus, tell me a little bit about the options I have as source of funds. Any type, what do you see usually in our practice of people using, what source of funds do they use, and what source can they use?
Yes, Pedro. As you just said, the source needs to be a legitimate source of funds, and so we need to prove with evidence and documentation regarding this investment. So basically, it's loans can be a good source of funds. If you sell a company or an apartment, it's a good source of funds. And maybe you save money during your life, and it's also a good source of funds. We just need to prove that with evidence showing the way the money took to make the investment in the regional center.
Okay, including inheritance, okay, guys? If you just inherited some money, that's a good source of funds as well, okay, you can use. One important topic to emphasize when we talk about students, usually, I would say 99% of the time, that student itself, she or he does not have the money, okay? That money comes from the parents, okay? So when coming from the parent, we have basically two options. One is for the parent itself to be the petitioner, and another is for the children, for the son or for the daughter, to be the petitioner. Okay, Chris, explain me the two options. So if the father wants to petition, he will be able to carry with him on the petition the children below 21, right? But if he wants to petition on behalf of or not he wants to petition, but if he wants to sponsor the petition of his son or his daughter independently, what are the options? What's usually done?
So in terms of these two options, if the parent wants to be the petitioner or decides to be the petitioner, that parent should have the intention of moving to the United States. That's maybe an important consideration because there's a physical presence requirement, after they actually move here with the green card. But maybe the advantage would be that they can include more people in that one petition, and they can move here and be a permanent resident for a few years and move back if that's what they so desire down the line, of course. If they wish to just help facilitate the EB-5 immigration of one of their children under 21, they can donate funds to that child, maybe paying any applicable gift taxes.
Under 21 or after 21, right? It can be someone, for example, doing a master's degree, 28 years old, and the father donates to that children 28 years old. Again, guys, just to be clear for the audience, under 21, the children can accompany the petition of the parents. Older than 21, the petitioner has to be himself or herself. In that case, father will need to sponsor, okay? And how is that sponsor possible? Usually donation, okay? So, and that's a great option. Let me just give a hypothetical scenario here. So me as a father, I can donate to my daughter, 17 years old. Okay, I donate $800,000. She is the petitioner for herself. Okay, that's her asset now. That's her cash now. She invests in the regional center. Okay, and very, very, very important. It's an investment. Okay, she's not spending that money. She's investing that money. Okay, and then I will ask Bruna. Bruna, when do those funds usually return? So for my daughter that's just receiving the donation, has invested, that money will come back later in her life, usually in a very good situation. She will probably be around graduation. Bruna, how do you see those options playing around with the investment, and how does that money comes back, right?
Yeah, it should always come back. Exactly as you said, this is an investment. You're not buying a green card, and the US government wants to make sure that we're not selling green cards. That's why it has to be an investment with some type of risk. Unlike some other programs, you're not able to obtain a green card through real estate by placing $1 million in a bank account. It has to be an investment that creates 10 jobs, which is a requirement through this program, and that has some type of risk. It doesn't mean that you have to make a risky investment, but there has to be some type of risk in order for it to be to qualify for this program. Okay, so the way the program was written is that the regional centers are not able to return investment prior to the request for the permanent residence, which is the 829. Okay, so there are various steps to the EB-5 process. The first process is the I-526. When approved, the investor and all the dependents receive a conditional green card, which is valid for 2 years. And after that, actually 3 months prior to that conditional green card expiring is when they can ask for the permanent green card. And we are then, after that process, able to return investment to the investors. Okay, so after the investment is returned to the investor, that is called going full cycle on the process. Okay, there are few regional centers, I would say, out there that have been able to complete that. Okay, so that is something very important and something we're very proud of, that we have already redeemed on various previous projects, and the investment should definitely always be returned. So that timing is usually at least 5 years for the investor to see those funds back.
Okay, and very good that you mentioned your track record. Guys, when choosing a regional center, check for the track record of that regional center, which is a big plus for you guys at FirstPathway. Congratulations on that. So speaking about the timing, just to continue my example here. So for my son, I'll make 2 donations, or even better, let me mix the example. So my rich cousin will lend the money, okay, to my daughter. Okay, so now she borrowed the money from my rich cousin. Is that possible? Yes, that's a legitimate source of funds. So she will have a petition based on the money she borrowed from my rich cousin. And 5 years from now, roughly 5 years, as Bruna said, that investment will be returned to her. Now let's focus to my son that's now in Harvard, let's say. I will donate the $800,000 to him. So that's his asset now. And he makes the investment. He's also the petitioner. Now we have two petitions. My daughter and my son, based on two different source of funds, both of which are legitimate source of funds, we're good to go. Okay? Why am I emphasizing so much the timing? Because even the time to return the investment is a good thing when we're talking about students of that age. Our experience here shows that that money will come back, usually at an age where these students will most need that money to start their professional lives and their family lives. So the father that's donating 800,000 now, or when the son is 18, 20 years old, 22, that money will go back to the son or to the daughter when they are most likely about to get married, buy the first house, the first apartment. So it's also good on your asset planning for your kid. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. Chris, you mentioned very briefly about recent changes on the program, and touch on those quick topics for us, the EB-5 reform that has just passed.
Sure. So among the, I guess, most important things that were overhauled were the investment values, which I'll start with now. Minimum investment for investments in regional centers is $800,000, and that's based on projects located in targeted employment areas, which are high unemployment areas, rural areas, or projects for infrastructure, which is a new thing under the EB-5 program. And that's like government infrastructure. The regular amount is $1,050,000. But in practice, a regional center program most likely won't be in the $1 million mark, just because $800,000 is more competitive and attractive, of course. A second big change, and maybe the biggest actually for international students, is the ability to simultaneously file an application to adjust status with the EB-5 petition or after the EB-5 petition was submitted. If the petitioner is currently in the United States in a temporary non-immigrant or non-immigrant employee or student status, and we're specifically saying that to exclude people in tourist status. So this is a pretty big benefit, because before people had to wait for the EB-5 petition to be approved, which could take a long time, depending on processing time, which has gradually increased over the years to an unbearable, almost unbearable period. It's highly beneficial to be able to adjust status immediately, because that also means that students can, they could abandon their F technically. Most importantly, they would obtain employment authorization after a few months, let's say about 6 months. This would allow them maybe to work in something outside of OPT. They wouldn't necessarily have to observe the OPT requirements. Having employment authorization, they could maybe have a part-time job. They could start their own company. It just provides a lot of flexibility, and it also provides certainty in terms of immigration status, because they won't necessarily be beholden to the F visa. They'll be in the process of becoming US permanent residents.
Okay, guys, this is huge. This is probably the most important change on immigration lately in the past few years. So basically, before that change, we needed to petition the I-5 to 6, which is the very first petition on EB-5. And then the petitioner would need to wait for a long period without the work authorization, okay, without adjusted status, that's what we call. So that person would not gain the benefits of the program before that huge period. What the change has done is to get rid of that gap. And now, if the petitioner is within the US, okay, in the US, considering other circumstances, of course, but in the US, we can apply for adjustment of status concurrently with the I-526. That can expedite tremendously the benefits of the EB-5, okay? And that comes one question, very important question here for that I, again, ask questions, okay, guys, and I'll pick the questions as we go. That question comes from Eduardo. Chris, I will send that to you. Do you see any risk in future restrictions or changes for F1 students to adjust status and do concurrent filing for EB-5 visas? In other words, do you see any risk that this new benefit can be somehow or is somehow jeopardized by future regulations?
Well, in general, if the government in statute accords people a certain right and they take advantage of it, any changes in the future won't apply retroactively to people who have already applied. So I know there's some concern about the EB-5 program having to be reauthorized and in some way being a little unstable, but if people were to adjust status, let's say just before September 2027, and the program for some reason passed through a certain prolonged reauthorization process due to bickering among political parties and other priorities, those people that applied wouldn't have to fear becoming unlawful or anything like that, because at the time that they applied, the program was authorized. Another point may be that people that have employment authorization in connection with adjustment of status, that employment authorization is valid during the adjudication of their adjustment of status, which in this case would be based on the I-526 petition, the EB-5 petition, meaning that the EB-5 petition has to ultimately be approved for them, to retain that employment authorization and for that employment authorization to become a green card eventually. So that should really be their main concern. If the EB-5 petition is approved, then they shouldn't have anything to worry about.
And Eduardo, most importantly, if you petition, okay, aside any extraordinary circumstance, if you petition on time, if you petition now, before any changes, you will be what we call your grandfather by this benefit as of today. Okay, the benefit is valid now. If you apply it until the benefit is still valid, you will most of the time, 99% of the time, be grandfather with that right, and there should be no problem for you. Okay. In terms of timing, you also asked how our clients with the concurrent filings and etc. and what have been the times for work and travel authorizations. They are taking a while. Okay. On EB-5s, still there's no clear sense on how long they're going to take, but there is a very good indication, and I want to call the attention of everyone to this information now. USCIS has recently informed that they have a target to process I-526 in 6 months. So they wish, okay, that's a target that they have mentioned, that until the end of 2023, they want to bring down the processing time for I-526 to 6 months. So Eduardo, if I-526 need to be processed, or at least they will aim to process within 6 months, then the work authorization should as well be shortened up. Okay, Bruna, I want to hear you on this as well, on timing and how our clients and investors, how are they feeling about this news that USCIS is planning to process I-526 within 6 months until sometime until 2023, they will, at the end of 2023, they should shorten that up.
This is obviously very good, is that they acknowledge that the processing times have become too long. And this is not an issue only with EB-5, throughout various types of visas. During the pandemic, after COVID, during COVID, processing times got a lot worse. And also because of the lapse in EB-5, that also helped make those processing times longer. So prior to COVID, someone that I had various investors that I applied for EB-5 and were approved in a year, less than 2 years. And during COVID, those times went to 3-4 years if you look at averages, going backwards. So it's very good that they placed the 6-month target. It's very aggressive, and not everyone thinks that they're going to be able to reach that. But regardless, it shows that we should be seeing some improvement. And we have also seen in the past few days, actually, that Biden is actively discussing how that is going to happen, if it's going to be through reallocation of resources within USCIS or hiring more staff in order to reach those goals. Again, those goals, it's on the USCIS website. It's not only for EB-5. They have processing timing goals for various other types of immigration processes. So we should start seeing improvements in processing times. So those are the timing, the processing times for the actual 5 to 6. I wanted to mention also that we have seen people that have already applied for the adjustment of status. So past investors that have been waiting for their 5 to 6 approvals, if they're in the United States, for example, they are also able to file the adjustment of status. It doesn't have to be concurrent. It can be concurrent or anytime after. So we have some investors that have done that and have received work authorization in as fast as 4 months. I think that's the fastest we have seen. So, anything after that, I think average, we shouldn't say that as an average. That's probably the fastest we have seen. But 6 months, I would say, is a good timing to give for someone to receive their work permit after adjustment of status. The travel permit, I believe, is still taking longer, maybe 10 months. I'm not sure what you guys are seeing. And it's important to mention that the person waiting on adjustment of status is not able to leave the country while they receive that travel permit.
Okay, good points. Bruna, I will remain with you for the benefits. We're talking about the EB-5 as an immigration strategy, but the result of being a permanent resident, the result of getting a green card is also on the financial side. There are several advantages, and I want you to start touching those topics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say this is like one of the major reasons why I see families applying for EB-5 is usually thinking of their kids. They want their kids to go to college or high school in the United States, and there are many benefits for those that want to study in the US. So, and I can say that on a personal level, I went to university in the United States on an international student visa, F1 visa, and I remember that I paid 3 times more than a resident.
Join the club. I did the same. 3 times more.
The cost, the true cost of EB-5, if you consider that you're receiving the investment back, and usually there's a little bit of a return, it doesn't go over $100,000. So usually just those savings, you're already paying, for the lower tuition, okay, for applying for EB-5. Also, international students don't have as much access to scholarships. There are many more scholarships available for those with a green card. Student loans offered by the government, which can be paid for like 30 years with relatively low rates. They're not available to non-US residents. And then some of the benefits that we already mentioned here, you know, if you are studying in the US, you're not able to work usually during your studies. Only with OPT, which is usually after you graduate, that you are able to work, and there are restrictions. It doesn't last forever. And it's obviously better for you to be able to have some experience, job experience while you're studying. Maybe if you want to work during summer or have a part-time job, if you're a resident, you're going to be able to do that. You're able to work, you're able to do anything just basically as an American. Okay. So, you know, those are the major reasons why we see families planning on having their children study applying for EB-5.
Okay, good. Let me add one topic only. You mentioned public student loans, but also for private student loans. Private student loans, we usually have a harder approval process if you are a foreigner. I've gone through that problem before. Thank God this is past me, it's already done. But you know, for a long time I had to deal with the bank, and we know that college in the US, it's very expensive. So having the benefit of being a permanent resident when you are studying and being able to lower the entire cost of financing, either on a public loan or private loan or scholarships, that's a huge difference, besides the work, of course. Chris, you are born and raised.
One more thing, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I didn't explain 100%, is that today, those that are international students and want to work after graduation, they have the OPT, usually 1 year, in some cases 3 years. But the point is that when they look for a job, most US companies, they don't even call for an interview if you're not authorized to work in the United States. So if you look for jobs, it says there, I'm not sure how they write it, but they do not interview anyone that is not authorized to work in the United States. And most companies do not want to have to apply for an H-1B visa, because the likelihood of someone obtaining the H-1B being accepted through the H-1B, I think it's about 30%. So even if they want to hire this person that is recently graduated and usually does not have much experience, it's difficult for them to have a reason to want this person versus someone that has work authorization. So it increases greatly the ability for an international student to be able to remain in the United States. I know very few people that want to go to the United States, study, and come back. Many people do want to come back a few years after, but usually they want a few years of professional experience in the United States in their resume. So this is going, by having permanent residence, they increase greatly the number of opportunities, work opportunities they're going to have.
No, definitely. And I understand the employers going through all the visa process for a foreigner is not an easy task. It takes a long time. So usually they are looking for someone who can come and join and start working tomorrow. Right? That's why it's so important for parents to plan ahead. What parents want is to put their children on a level playing field with others, so they can be retained and start working the next day. That's what the EB-5 will do. Just to add one topic, there are other options to what we call self-petition, where people can petition without a sponsor, without a job offer. But those are usually not suitable to students, because those are usually based on a long-time career. So parents may hear, oh, there are other options. There is the EB-1A, EB-2 national interest waiver, and so forth. Those usually are not suitable for students, because students are on the beginning of their career. So EB-1A, EB-2 national interest waiver, which could be other options, are not really an option to an early student, a young professional. Okay, so EB-5 stands out as, in my opinion, the best option available. Okay. Additional benefits for F1 students. Chris, you were born and raised in the US. Thank God you didn't need to go through these problems, but you have colleagues all the time in the school. Tell a little bit about other day-to-day difficulties that you have seen, and if you can add something to what Bruno just said.
Well, I see the price as being a significant motivation for possibly wanting to pay in-state tuition as a US resident. Aside from that, which has already been touched upon, I think from a student perspective, having employment authorization during university might be beneficial. Maybe if they want to expand their internship and employment or even entrepreneurial possibilities. I think being confined maybe to OPT could be significantly restrictive. I think I might be picturing like a young tech entrepreneur. Imagine, let's say, Mark Zuckerberg at Harvard, if he had to deal with, starting Facebook during OPT.
I can change my example now. My kid will leave Harvard and found the next Facebook.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so I think having that benefit is significant. And I think it should be something that maybe like the young entrepreneurial student would rather have sooner than later.
Oh yeah, definitely. Let me just go back before I go to the next slide. Let me go back to Eduardo. We answered his question as if his question was about retroactive implications, but was not quite that. He's clarifying here. My question about future changes was not because of retroactive implications, but more for timing issues of changes occurring before I'm able to file EB-5 as an F1 visa holder. Eduardo, so your concern is the timing between now and you file. You should not be very concerned. Basically, we expect not to have many changes now. The EB-5 program has just been changed recently, so hopefully there will be no changes in the near future. However, with immigration, we never know. There are midterms elections coming up. In 2 years, we will have a presidential election. So my advice to you, do it quicker, okay? Do it.
Let me actually
now.
add to that, just because I kind of want to correct something, my previous example. In the statute, in the new EB-5 Act, RIA, USCIS only specifically committed to processing EB-5 petitions until September 2026. So 1 year before this new legislation expires. That doesn't mean that petitions filed from September 26 to September 2027 wouldn't be authorized. It just means that if there's some sort of fight during reauthorization, USCIS can pause their adjudication and kind of resume it later. So that's important to keep in mind. It might be early for that conversation, but maybe once people, start considering filing closer to 2026, then
in general, as a general advice in terms of immigration, do it as quick as you can. Okay, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Okay. Although again, there is nothing on the near term that we expect to change. Bruna, please. Say something.
Ask you guys to touch on the points that I see a lot of people asking when they go as an F1, if they should apply for F1 prior to EB-5, if it's okay to apply for F1 and then EB-5 first, then F1.
Well, F1 before EB-5 would be better because F1 isn't a visa where people can have dual intent. They have to have the intent to be a non-immigrant at the time of application. So it would be safer to do the F1 first because at that time, they can represent that they would be non-immigrants, and then they can do the concurrent adjustment of status here in the United States once they move with the F1.
But that doesn't mean that those with F1 already in the United States are not able to apply for EB-5, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let me just get one question that's a little, related to this. Bruna, how is FirstPathway handling investments made by minors? I don't know what he meant about handling, which sense. But tell us a little bit about the process of investments made by minors.
Yeah, we have seen that before, and I think legally.
Let me put a slide here, minor as a petitioner, but you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think you guys are the lawyers, so you guys are able to say what is accepted or not. But we have seen cases of minors being the applicants. That actually happens a lot with regions like India, where they usually send the kids to study and the parents don't travel. The parents don't want to become US residents. So we have seen many cases where students, 17 years old, for example, are able to sign a contract and enter into a contract and be the petitioner themselves.
Okay, Chris, would you like to add something and explain
Sure. Just that the EB-5 regulations are totally silent on this. So it's not necessarily immigration law, it's contracts law. So in the US in general, people under 18 cannot be held to contracts because they're found to not be legally capable of making that decision. But if their parent signs, like co-signs or acknowledges the contract, then it's possible for somebody under 18 to be bound to a contract. Kind of like having a co-signer to a lease
investment,
or yeah.
Nothing different than that. Let me grab, guys, I skipped one slide to talk about the minors. We had that slide at the end. I don't want to take too much time on EB-5 processing and reserved visas before we are 5 more minutes, and I want to save some time for Q&As. Chris, can you just talk a little bit about this slide here?
Sure. So there are 10,000 visas allocated to the EB-5 program annually, and that actually includes dependents, unfortunately, which wasn't changed in the recent regulation. It was one of the lobbied things, but you don't get everything you want. So from these 10,000 visas, they can now be allocated as follows for EB-5 investments. So for projects in rural areas, they specifically have 20% of the 10,000 allocated to them. There's specifically in the statute, it's written that they'll receive priority processing. We don't necessarily know what that means yet, but it looks good. Targeted employment area projects, so projects in areas of high unemployment, 10% of the 10,000 visas are specifically reserved for them. Infrastructure projects, 2% of the visas are specifically reserved for infrastructure projects. So the idea is just to incentivize investments in these particular areas.
Okay, sounds good. Bruna, what to consider when choosing a regional center? We spoke about the EB-5, we spoke about the advantages for students, but petitioner needs to choose a regional center. Just give us an overview on usually what are the main factors that the parent should be choosing, or the student, of course, can be an older person, let's say someone doing his MBA at 30, 35 years old.
Yeah, so track record and history, I would say, is very important. Look for a regional center that has been around for a long time. And usually what that means is that they have history of having various projects approved. And that does not only mean they're having 5 to 6 approvals, which is mainly, it's more focused on the investor themselves, but 8 to 9 approvals. So when the investors, when the projects receive 8 to 9 approval, it means the regional center did its job. It created the 10 jobs, it did everything it had to do. And there are many regional centers out there that have not even reached that stage, because they're newer regional centers that don't have that many projects in their history. So I would say that is very important. And obviously, a regional center that has returned money to investors. There are also many regional centers that haven't reached that haven't gone full cycle, okay, which means ending the entire process. The EB-5 process ends when you return the investment to the investors. That's, I would say, number one. Track record of projects, I think it kind of goes in with what I said, making sure that hopefully 100% of the past projects have been approved. And the viability of the current project. You want to look at the past, but what are they offering today? Is the project something that is being planned, or is it something that is already under construction? So I'm saying construction because most of the projects end up being related to construction of something, usually hotels. That's very big for projects, very popular type of projects for EB-5. And why is that? Because the program says that each investor has to create 10 jobs. So how do you scale? A regional center wants to be able to have a lot of investors, which means you need a lot of jobs. And where you usually create a lot of jobs is through construction. And hotels continue to create jobs after the construction ends with the operation of the hotel. So hotels are, I would say, the number one, the most popular and proven to work for EB-5, for the EB-5 program. There are also some broker-dealers and companies that do independent due diligence. So if you're an investor and you do not feel comfortable making the decision yourself, there are professionals that do that, and they should be independent to the regional center, just like the immigration attorney is independent to the regional center. So it's very important to make sure that there's not a conflict of interest, which also brings me to another point of regional centers, where there are a few regional centers that are the developers themselves. Okay, so there are companies that, they're the ones building these projects, and they decide to become regional centers to raise funds for their own projects. There are some people that may find that there is a little bit of conflict of interest in that model. So, it's up to the investor to decide that. But there are many investors that do not have a lot of experience with investments. And for those, I tend to tell them to look for one of these financial advisors that can help them with the due diligence of the projects.
Okay, great points, great points. Guys, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. in Brazil. I want to save a few minutes to go over questions and also to wrap up. We answered most of the questions during the presentation, but there are two that were left for us to answer. Mateus, a question for you. The investment amount can change until 2027? That's one of the questions that we left behind.
Yes, so for now, no. The answer is no, but on the 2027, the amount can be correct by the inflation ends. But as you told, we are 2 years from presidential election, so maybe yes.
Yeah, it's uncertain. Well, let's say it's certain until legislation can change. Okay, so we have that amount set in the law. That law can be changed. At least we have more stability until 2026. Okay, So in practical terms, I would work with that amount for a long period, especially the history of the amount. The 500K, which was the previous amount, did not change for a long period. I don't expect to be changed in the near future, even on midterm. Okay.
It's hard to make those changes, right?
It is. It is.
Takes years
Well,
to be.
everything is hard to change in the US these days in Congress.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's not going to change. Another question. This is an interesting question, and I want to address. The question is, can I obtain the EB-5 investment? Can I obtain the EB-5 by investing in apartments? Let me try to clarify that question. Perhaps the reasoning behind is the regional center can invest in real estate, certainly, as Bruno mentioned. There's several regional centers investing in real estate, for example, construction, hotels, and etc. But if the question is, can I obtain my EB-5 by buying an apartment? The answer is no. Okay, so the investment needs to be at risk on an enterprise that will create jobs. So if you are just buying this very nice penthouse in Sunny Isles, if you're buying this very nice apartment at Park Avenue, New York, the answer is no. You are most likely paying way more than the $800,000, and that will not let you obtain the EB-5. Okay. Again, any other passive investments, for example, can I, if I buy $10 million in Apple shares, can I obtain my EB-5? The answer is no. I will spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in Tesla shares. Will I obtain my EB-5? No. Again, look for a regional center. The regional center has been authorized and certified by the US government to receive the cash. Okay, that doesn't mean that the US government is backing up your investment. Your investment is at risk, but the regional center has been certified as a project that will allow you to obtain the EB-5. Okay, buying an apartment that's already there will not make you an EB-5 investor. Okay, guys, we're 5 minutes past our time. Bruna, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Final remarks.
Well, if anyone here is interested in speaking more about this, it's very difficult to touch on all the points within 1 hour. This is our contact information here, and I'm happy to continue the conversation with any of you. Okay, thanks, Bruna. Chris and Mateus, thank you very much. Our contact information is on the screen. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Mateus.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Guys, thank you very much for the audience. We hope we deliver the message that we wanted, which is provide enough information for you parents to choose to, this is an option for your kids. For you, a young professional going out of college now, or getting out of an MBA or a master's degree or doctorate degree. So that's the initial information that you needed. Or you as a college counselor, now you can advise your students on more options that you have. And again, if you need more information, our contact information is on the screen for you. Feel free to send us email, follow us on the social media as well. We post a lot of information related to immigration there. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.